What's up, chat? Welcome back to Powerful Nothing. Today we have another cool budget Commander deck. Today we're looking at Gluntch. Gluntch the Bestower is 1 green and a white for a 0/5 legendary creature jellyfish. It has flying, and at the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2+1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card, then choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. Gluntch is a very cool commander that can be taken a bunch of different ways. You can lean into any of those abilities. We're kind of leaning into a bit of all of them in this deck, in that this is going to be a group hug deck. We're going to be giving our opponents a bunch of nice pretty things, but importantly our deck is most suited to take advantage of all the things that we're dishing out, therefore we'll break the symmetry and come out ahead. There will also be a +1 counter sub-theme in this deck just so we can make the most out of that part of Gluntch. The game plan on the deck is also a little bit outside of the ordinary, because the plan is we're going to give our opponents a bunch of stuff. What's great about this deck as well is it comes in at a fantastically low $23.52 at time of recording, so it's all nice and budget. What we'll do in this video as well is highlight sections where I think it's worth spending a bit more cash to get a bit more bang from your buck in terms of results, and where you can scrimp a bit and where you can just run a bit more chaff or what you have available to you. Let's go over the different sections of the deck. We'll also be highlighting where I think it's worth spending more money and where you can save and just go through your chaff pile. Let's start off with our ramp. Here I've got it listed down that we have 13 bits of ramp. This is kind of broken down into a couple of different categories within that. We have our standard generic bits. We have our Wayfarer's Bauble, we have our Avacyn's Pilgrim, we have our Commander Sphere. These are the solid cards you'll see in any Commander deck. They're perfectly fine, they're just generic, we know they're going to work. We then have some more synergistic pieces. So we have cards like Veteran Explorer, Marching Duodrone, Borderland Explorer, and Root Weaver Druid. These work nicely with the group hug element of the deck. We're also giving our opponents ramp or treasures as we're going about playing the game. Everyone will like us, everything will be fine. We then have some cards that work more specifically with the +1 counter synergy of the deck, which we're going to get into a bit later when we get into our win cons. We have cards like Gaia Sage, Incubation Druid, and Hamza, Guardian of Arishin. These are really cool cards that work really well with +1/+1 counters. I think Gaia Sage might actually be the most expensive card in the deck because of that synergy. It works really nicely with Gluntch. We can just keep putting counters on it and keep having it tap for more and more mana. That's a nice little mix of cards we know will work, cards we know will work with our opponents, and cards that will work with our commander. It's all synergistic, it's all great. Let's move on to our card draw. Now, on the list it says 7 bits of card draw, but that doesn't take into account our commander or some of the other group hug cards that we'll get onto in a little bit, so it is more than 7. In this list, I've tried to make it synergistic, so we have cards like Flump, Secret Rendezvous, Your Temple is Under Attack, and Cut a Deal. These are group hug card draw cards. It's not just us who draw cards, our opponents draw them too. It goes in with what the deck is doing. We are trying to give our opponents resources for reasons we'll get onto in a moment. We then have some generic bits with cards like Harmonize. We have a group huggy / rampy card in Sylvala Explorer Returns, and then we have a +1 counter card draw card with Inspiring Call. I think Flump is the second most expensive card in the deck, and similarly to Gaia Sage, it just works really nicely with what the deck is trying to do. It really fits in with the whole ethos of the deck. So for me, it was worth splashing out a little bit there. The rest of it, like, you don't have to run Secret Rendezvous, you don't have to run Your Temple is Under Attack, you don't have to run card draw spells that give our opponents cards. I wanted to put them in because I think it works thematically, and I think it'll be good bringing the whole deck together, but you could run more generic card draw bits in there if you wanted to. Let's move on to our interaction section next, and this one actually looks massive, partly because there are some group hug cards that have kind of snuck into it a little bit. For cool bits, we have a card like Reciprocate, but then we have some solid interaction with cards like an Unwanted Remake, Kazali Pride Mage, Underloath Leopard. Spectral Grasp is a solid pacifism effect, and so is pacifism itself. Along with Generous Gift, they make up the kind of bog standard ways of killing your opponents. You could swap those out for any white bits of interaction, any green bits of interaction, they would do the job just as well. On top of that is where things get a little bit more interesting. This is where we have cards like Vow of Duty, Vow of Wilderness, Pariah, and Predatory Impetus. This is where the strategy of the deck comes to the fore a little bit more. What we are trying to do is give our opponents resources so they can play big dumb creatures, or we can put the counters on their creatures to make them bigger. What we're then going to do is put a Vow of Duty on it so it can't come at us. It can swing at our opponents. We're fine if our opponents kill each other with their creatures, but these stop them coming at us, and that's kind of where the group hug element of the deck really comes into play. The only reason the white impetus is not in here is because I forgot to order one before we had to record gameplay. To the right of that, we then have some specific group hug effects. Cards like Curse of Bounty and Curse of Vitality and Curse of Predation are great cards at incentivizing our opponents to fight amongst themselves. Like, we're here, we're the nice Gluntch player, we're just going to be sitting in the background. These cards incentivize them to go somewhere else. We then have cool cards like Armadillo Cloak and Pollen Bright Wings. These are cards that we're going to put on our opponent's best creatures, and then when they swing, we will get the effect because of the way that they are worded. That is really cool. We then have one of my favorite cards in all of Magic, Rites of Flourishing. Games with Rites of Flourishing are just nicer, they're more fun to play. Everyone gets cards, everyone gets ramp. Will it backfire? Who knows? Watch the gameplay and find out. And again, what this section is trying to do is to get our opponents to fight amongst themselves so they don't come at us. To the right of that, we have a bit of recursion. We have a bunch of effects. A bunch of these are auras. Auras aren't naturally the best cards at sticking around in games of Commander. That's why we have cards like Skullwinder and Evolution Witness. Evolution Witness, a nice little synergy package with the Gluntch because we can put counters on it and get the effect back again and again. We have some protection with Loyal Unicorn. Again, just a solid card with our commander and just protecting our board when we attack. We love that. Our win con section is over on the right. This is a fairly decent wedge. They kind of fall into two different categories. It's either cards that reward us for having counters or solid cards that do things with counters. So by that I mean we have cards like Conclave Mentor, which double up our counters. We have cards like Erdan. We have cards like Pride Malkin and Tuskar Captain. These reward us for having counters on our creatures, like the Tuskar and the Pride Malkin giving all our creatures with counters on them trample. That's a nice reward for powering up a big creature with some counters in this deck. This deck would definitely also run the card from Khans that gives all creatures with counters on them flying. However, for some reason, no store in the UK had one in stock when I ordered this deck. But otherwise, definitely would go in, very solid budget card. The other part of the win cons are cards that do cool things with counters. So cards like Juniper Order Ranger puts an additional counter on that creature and puts a counter on itself. It gets massive. Enduring Scale Order is a similar version of that effect. Or we have cards like Baby Cakes, Forgotten Ancient, and Gorgeous George, Mana Gorger Hydra. They're just going to sit there getting massive and we can beat our opponents with them. For lands, we have some. We have a Blossoming Sands, a Selesnya Guildgate, and an Evolving Wilds, and then a bunch of lovely basics. If you're looking for something a little bit different, something that gets you involved in the game in a different aspect, like if you like the politicking that comes in Commander, I think this is a fantastic deck for you. Because to an extent, you don't have to do the bad part of politicking. You can just give your opponents nice things, and then because cards like Vow of Duty and Vow of Wilderness and the effects that make people want to attack each other, they will lead people to doing what you want without you actually having to do the whole, oh, if you don't attack me, I won't attack you, that kind of thing. It won't play out that way. It'll play much nicer. I think as well, a conscious decision I made in building this deck was to not include any ghostly prism effects, effects that mean our opponents have to pay mana to attack us. Those are generally the biggest red flag for me for group hug decks, because that's the point where players realize you're the threat. If someone plays a ghostly prism effect, they're not up to any good, you should attack them. And I think this deck gets around, it threads the needle of being a nice, cool deck that's lovely to everyone while also being able to hit them in the face. And if you like the look of this deck, well, good news! This deck is part of some upcoming gameplay that we have ready for the channel. If you like that video or this one, do make sure you subscribe to the channel. Helps us out, help us do cool and new things. Also, let us know any budget commanders you would like us to take a look at for future gameplay, and we might just check them out. But until then, thank you very much for watching Powerful Nothing. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Goodbye.